Hello and welcome to the Tutor's Guide to Math. We're going to be doing a sample SAT section today. This is a calculator section. We'll have 45 minutes to take 31 questions. Please plan accordingly. I'm going to go through these swiftly but efficiently. I apologize if the aspect ratio for this video ends up being terrible. I have an ultra wide monitor and I wanted to have the timer here on screen for live split, and Zoom doesn't really let us do that unless I use my entire freaking monitor. So without some fancy video editing software afterwards, which I know nothing about, I was going to have to use just the full screen mode. So if this ends up not looking great, I apologize. Hopefully, if you like full screen this, it'll look okay. But we are going to be looking at this test. Obviously, it's a standard test. It has all the usual stuff on the front page. This test, by the way, does not come from the College Board, is courtesy of Ivy Global. So I want to make sure I give credit where it's due because I didn't create this. It is coming from a third party, but hopefully it should be reasonably accurate. We're going to find out. So we're going to get started in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so which of the following expressions is equivalent to 3x minus 2 times x plus 1? The easiest thing to do is to write this out. So we're just going to FOIL that. We're going to say that first is 3x squared. Obviously, we need to have a 3x squared term. Forget b. We've got outer is plus 3x, inner is 2x. Oh, one of these is minus. Whoops, that's a minus. That's a minus. Okay, and then last, minus 2. Okay, so we need a minus 2. All of them have a minus 2. And then in here, this becomes 3x minus 2x is plus x. So we're going to be looking at D. An athlete throws a javelin, a long metal sphere at a track and field competition. We don't care. Do not care. Javelin's height in feet is blah, 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 blah. Do not care. All we need to care about is that this is a height function. All right. What is the height of the javelin after 5 seconds? So basically, we want to input 5 and figure out what the result is. Grab your calculator. Negative 16 times 5 squared plus 128 times 5 gives us 240. Boom, done. All right, number 3, we've got a weird made up symbol of a function. So whenever we see a number in a first block and a number in a second block, that means do this to it. So the value of negative 3, 4. So this is the x and this is the y. So 2 times negative 3 minus 3 times 4. It's a weird question, but it's not actually hard. This is negative 6 minus 12. This is a, negative 18. Depreciation is the blah, 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 whatever, whatever. Bought a computer for 930, was 930. Now it's 570. And that was 3 years passing. And the most important part to take from this is that it's depreciating linearly. That linear is super important. Normally, you would expect this to be an exponential decay, and that makes it very fancy. You have to do like logarithm stuff. We don't have to do that here. Depreciates linearly means it goes on a smooth slope. So 930 minus 570 divided by 3 will give us our slope. And so we just need to ask, what is that? Calculator 930 minus 570 is 360, divided by 3 is 120. So it's losing $120 of its value each year. All right, there is one page down. Let us scroll to the next screen. All right, so now on a house blueprint, 2 feet by 2 feet represents 1 inch. If a room on a blueprint is 5 by 6, what is the area? So 5 inches by 6 is going to be the model, and we need to figure out what the real thing is. So if every inch is 2 feet, that means that the real one is 10 feet by 12 feet. And as a result, the area of the actual room is 120 square feet. Now, one thing that can get you into trouble is if you do 5 times 6 is 30, and then you go, oh, but 2 feet is 1 inch and multiply it by 2, and you would pick 60. However, the reason why that is wrong is because this is a 2-dimensional amount. It's not inches, it's inches squared, because we're dealing with area. So you need to actually apply that ratio twice if you go by that method. Far simpler is to just figure out what the actual size of the room is out of the get-go. All right, number 6, we've got 250 students, and students can only participate in one club, so therefore we don't have any overlap. We've got 20, we've got 70, we've got 90, and we've got 40. So if these are all the clubs in the school, then this looks to be 220 students are in a club. Now, 220 is an answer, but that's not what they asked. They asked how many are not in a club. Well, there are 30 extra students at that point. And honestly, you might have been able to guess if you've seen enough tests that 220 was going to be the total and 30 was going to be the leftover. Which of the following equations best describes the trend line for the scatter plot above? Well, we know that it's going to be a quadratic and not a line, because if it was 3x plus 1, it would be straight. If it was 3x, it would be straight. So we already eliminate those answers. Now, the question is, what is going on with this this equation here versus these two choices? I'm going to take 328 and I'm going to plug it in. And if I do 3 times 3 squared plus 1, that does indeed give me 28. If I take just plain old 3 squared plus 2, that is not 28. Therefore, it's not B, it must be A. I'm not confirming that is A as soon as I get this 28. I'm using this to eliminate answers, not to confirm them. So when I decide that, okay, B is not correct, that is when I say, okay, now it must be A. Number 8, a distributor receives 10% discount from John and a 15% from Lynn. How much would they pay in dollars to buy a drill and an electric saw? So drill and electric saw would normally be $80 here and $80 there. So it's the same. All right, so $80, but minus 10% is minus 8. If we take the 80 and we do minus 15%, well, that's going to be half again as much, so that's 12. If you're not sure of that, use your calculator. So there's going to be discounting by 8, discounting by 12. How much more would they pay in dollars? Well, this was only discounting by 8, this was discounting by 12, so you have $4 extra of savings. All right, there is another page down. I need to hit clear. Close the annotate so I can scroll. There we go. Thank you, Zoom, for working with me here. All right, number 9. So we've got 2 questions referring to the same information. Graph shows the distribution of negative and even numbers in 3 sets. So we don't know anything about these sets. We just know they've got a bunch of negative numbers, a bunch of even numbers. How many sets have more even than negative numbers? That one did. That one did. This one did not. How do I know that? Because the even number stack is taller than the negative number stack. 2. If set B has 200,000 elements, so this is just percentage up here. We don't actually know how many there are. So we're going to say that, well, there's actually 200,000. How many more negative than even? Well, negative was about 75%. Even was about 50%. That's a difference of 25%. So 25% of the set is the difference, and there's 200,000. So what is 25% of 200,000? And well, 25% is a quarter, so a quarter of 200 is 50. It's 50,000. All right, 1 byte is a unit of memory size, blah, blah, blah. We don't care. All we need to know is a megabyte. 1 MB is approximately 10 to the 6th bytes. Okay, good to know. And Paul's hard drive accesses are at a rate of 150 megabytes per second. And he wants to work with 5 files that are each that big. Well, first of all, I'm going to multiply that by 5. So 2340 times 5 is 11,700 times 10 to the 6th bytes. And ask how long will it take to access them? Well, we need things in megabytes, not bytes. And well, this right here is basically a fancy way of saying megabytes. Because 1 megabyte is 10 to the 6th byte. So it's 11,700 megabytes. So what we know is we've got 11,700 MB times, and then our rate that we work at, actually it would be divided by, wouldn't it be? Let's back up. Work equals rate times time. The work being done is 11,700. The rate is 150. So the time is going to be 11,700 divided by 150. And we get 78. So the answer is D, right? Right? Wrong. What do you notice about D? 78 minutes. Holy crap, that's way longer than we had because this was in seconds. So it's 78 seconds, which is 1.3 minutes. Watch your units. Very easy to make that mistake. That was a very sneaky, underhanded question. So please be careful. 11 is the first question I can see someone very easily getting wrong. Not to say that you couldn't get those other ones wrong, but that's one that you could easily get wrong. Okay, number 12 now. We're going to see, I've been offered exchange for wood serving, it's blah, 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 blah. Which collection is most likely to choose? All right, this is just a fancy way of saying which one has the most money. We don't need all these words. The words don't tell us anything. So, all right, how's this going to play out? Well, let's see. We've got 20 times 5 cents plus 15 times 10 cents plus 4 times 25 cents equals whatever that equals. And then the other one's going to be 25 times 5 plus 5 times 10 plus 8 times 25. And so having more quarters definitely looks favorable, but let's find out. So um, this is going to be 100, 150, and 100. So that's a total of 350. And this is 125 and 50 and 200. 200 and 120 is 320. This is 375. So clearly offer 2 is worth more. Offer 2 is worth more than 1, so she should pick offer 2. Boom. All right. During the first month of life, a newborn's weight increases by 30% if a newborn weighs W when it is 1 month old, which of the following expressions represents the baby's weight at birth. Okay, I'm going to use a pick value strategy. So what I'm going to say is let's assume that the birth weight is 10 pounds. Now that's heavy for a baby, but I want to pick a nice round number. Then after 1 month, we're going to do plus 30%, which is 3. That's why I picked 10, because I can figure that out easily. So it goes to 13. So it means that if that's the weight after 1 month, we set this equal to W, and this should be our answer. So what the testing value strategy dictates is if W equals 13, the answer needs to be 10. We're going to use this now to eliminate our answers, and we're going to ask if we plug in a 13, do we get a 10? 0.3 times 13 is not 10. 1.3 times 13 is not 10. 13 divided by 1.3 looks to be 10. 1.3 divided by 13 is definitely not 10. So just eyeballing it, none of these answers make sense other than C. So that has to be the correct answer. 14 and 15 refer to the following information. Pie chart above. All right, so this is like 25% or a quarter. These two are basically also a quarter combined, and other represents a half. All right, 25% of the immigrant population originating in which of the following continents? And Europe isn't an answer. So we will note that Africa plus Asia is also basically a quarter. So we're going to go with B. 20% of the population from Europe are from France. Should that be is? Isn't population a singular verb? If there are a total of 1,500 immigrants in the city, how many immigrants are from France? All right, so first of all, there are 1,500 total, and we need to say times 0.25 or times 1/4 to get the number that are from Europe. That's, I believe, 375, yes. Now, of these, 20% of the population from Europe are from France. So it's not 20% of the whole, Thankfully, they didn't give us an answer that was 20% of the whole, or that would have been a very, very tempting answer to pick. But 375 times 20% now. And so grab our calculator because I don't want to do that in my head, and it ends up being 75 people. So be careful there. Let's, of course, remember that when you want to do percentage, you're going to say, you're just going to translate it from a sentence. So when it says, what number is 20% of Europe, basically. And so we're going to go through and we're going to say, well, the what number is the we don't know. Is means equals 20%. We write as 0.2. Of is typically times, and Europe's population was 375. So if you're not sure how to derive this, just take it word for word. All right, clear. Scroll. Moving on. We are at the 14.5-minute mark, so we're moving pretty quick here. We're under a minute per question, which is good because we'll need that later. If 10% of a number is 12, then what is the value of 5% of half of the original number? Okay, you got two choices. The first is you can figure out what the original number is, or you can work from here and you can say 10% is 12, so 5% would be half of that. That's 6. But oh, we want half of that, so we want half of 6, which is 3. If you don't like that, figure out what the number is. 10% of a number is 12. So 10% of a number is 12. And of course, let's remember that 10% we're going to write as 0.1 or 1/10. So now to get x, we're going to do 12 divided by 0.1, which is going to give us 120. Now we want to know 5% of half of the original number. All right, so half of the original number is 60. And we want to know what is 5% of that half of original number. So 0.05 times 60, and that should give you 3. What is the value of a plus b in the system of equations above? All right, so easiest is going to be to do a substitution because we have a equals right here. So b minus negative 2b minus 3 is equal to negative 24. So b minus negative 2b is 3b, minus negative 3 is plus 3, equals negative 24. 3b is equal to negative 27. b is equal to negative 9. Okay, now let's remember that a is equal to negative 2 times b minus 3. So this is 18 minus 3, that is 15. So a is 15, b is negative 9. Now let's make sure we answer the question being asked. They want a plus b. So 15 plus negative 9 is 6. Rule 1 of test taking, answer what they want. Don't settle for the negative 9 that you figured out first. Don't use the 15 either. Notice they're both answer choices. They want to mislead you that way. They've got good wrong answers. Otherwise, you would never pick any of the wrong answers. So they are very good at picking wrong answers that you might select, and those are obviously going to be among the choices. All right, which of the following is the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers? All right, I can tell you right now the answer is going to be C because it's the only one that's a multiple of 3, but let's talk about why. So let's write out our 3 consecutive odd integers. First of all, what does that mean? Well, if this number was an odd integer, the next consecutive odd integer would be 13 and then 15. These are odd numbers that are in a row. It's obviously not those specific numbers though. So what are they? I don't know. It's called the middle number x. If the middle number is x, the one above it is going to be 2 more than that. It would be 1 more than that, except we need consecutive odd, not just consecutive numbers. And the one below it's going to be x minus 2. So what do they total? If you add these together, you're going to get 3x. And this is the sum of them, so 3x equals the answer choice. Now, that means we need to be able to take this number and divide it by 3 cleanly and get an odd number at that. 23 is not a multiple of 3. 26 is not a multiple of 3. 290 is not a multiple of 3. I know because I know my divisibility tricks for 3. 105, 1 plus 0 plus 5 is 6. So that is divisible by 3, but just for funsies, 105 divided by 3 is 35. So our middle number is 35. The one above it's 37. The one below is 33. What is the value of the largest angle in the triangle above? Okay, so what we know about triangles is that they add up to 180 degrees. So if we take the sum. Well, I want a U there, not a W. Sum equals 180. All right, so 2x plus 3x plus 7x. What is that? That's 12x. So 12x is 180. That means x is 15, but we don't want to answer 15. We want to answer the value of the largest angle. That's obviously the 7x. So 7 times 15 is 105. Boom, D. The average in set A is 85 and the average in set B is 65. If the combined average of all the elements is 70 and A has 5 elements, how many elements are in B? Okay, so this is going to be a slightly more complicated question. The most important thing we need to remember is how we find an average. Average is equal to the sum divided by the number of things. And you know that. But what you don't realize is that we can work backwards. They give us the average, and what we really need to figure out is the sum. So I'm going to rewrite this as sum is equal to the average times the number of numbers. So what we know, let's actually make a little table here to organize our information. So we're going to say we've got set A, we've got set B, and then we've got combined. And we got average times the number of numbers equals the sum. All right, so what we know, just to organize our information, we know that set A has an average of 85. We know that set B has an average of 65, and we know their combined average is 70. We know that set A has 5 elements. We don't know how many are in set B, so I'm just going to call it X, and therefore the total is going to be 5 plus X. All right, now let's compare our sums. So the sum of the things in A is going to be whatever 85 times 5 is. So that's 425. 65 times X is just 65X. That's the best we can do. And then 70 times 5 plus X is 350 plus 70X. And what we know is that obviously the total, if we add this, it will make that. So we have 425 plus 65X is equal to 350 plus 70X. And now we just need to solve this. So 75 is equal to 5X, and therefore X is equal to 15. Now, there are other ways to come up with this answer. If you look at it, if this is 65 and this is 85, the 70 is a quarter of the way. So what I'm going to say is that this end is 3 times as heavy as this end, and so it's going to have 3 times as many members. If A has 5, then B must have 15. That's a really slick way. I don't recommend doing it that way unless you understand exactly why that would be. But the more important thing is to remember this average equals sum over number, and this translates into being able to solve for the number of numbers. We don't care what those numbers are, honestly. That's the important thing to take away here is we don't care. All we care about is that we can figure out what their total is. And using that and some combinations, we can figure out what's going on. I used the table to help me organize the information. Maybe that was helpful for you. Maybe that was unimportant. But there are definitely a lot of things that we could do to tidy up that question. Otherwise, it becomes really, really complicated. That is, the second question I would say is kind of sneaky, or at least challenging. That is a challenging question. All right, so let's come back here. Certain species of shark spends 25% sleeping, 50% hunting. What is left for what other activities do sharks have? I mean, maybe like mating, but like seriously, what else do sharks do? I guess sit in water and play shoots and ladders. All right, so we've got 25% of the day. I'm going to write that as a fraction. I'm going to say that's a quarter of D. So the rest of the day is 3/4 of D. 50% of the time hunting. So half of 3/4 D is hunting. That's 3/8 D. And the other half is whatever's left, and that's 3/8 D. Now, if you don't like that, we know we're taking a 25% and a 50% in some combination. I'm going to pick some number that 25% and 50% go into easily. So let's say that D is 24, because that's how many hours there are in a day. It doesn't have to be 24, but I think any multiple of 8 is a good choice here. So 25% of the day is spent sleeping. So minus 6 sleeping, that's 18. Half of the remaining time is spent hunting, that's 9. So it leaves 9. So 9 for other activities. So what we're going to do is we're going to say when D equals 9, the answer, or when D equals 24, excuse me, the answer must be 9. So now go to your answer choices and say which of those is true. Obviously, I've already kind of told you what the answer is down here. But if we plug in a 24, 3 times 24 over 2 is more than 9. I don't know what it is, but it's getting bigger. 3/4 of 24. All right, a quarter of 24 is 6. 3/4 of that is 18. That's not 9. Um, 3/8 of D. So an eighth is 3. 3/8 is going to be 9. This looks promising, but we don't stop here. We check the last answer. 24 over 12 is 2 times 3 is 6, and that is not equal to 9. So therefore, it must be C. So that's how you use the choose value strategy when you see these formula answer choices. All right. Age of a random sample is summarized above. So this is just a slice of a larger population. The whole population is 31,000. Our sample was 750. So what we need to remember is that, all right, 31,000 over 750 is equal to, calculator, help me out here, about 41.3. So what we should expect is that the actual numbers are about 41 times as big. All right, we expect there to be 15,200 females. Well, we know that there are 370 in the sample, so 370 times that 41.3, which I'm going to round and just write 41, is 15,173. That is pretty freaking close. I think this is going to be our answer, but let's check the other ones. We expect there to be 55, 80, 65 and older and younger in the population. Oh, 65 and younger. Okay, that take out the word old there. It's confusing. All right, so basically not the 95, everything else. So 50 plus 90 plus 135, and we'll multiply it by 41 to check, and that's 11,275. That is not 5580. Nope. We expect there to be 9,300 females between 19 and 65. Well, let's see. We got 90 plus 135 plus, I crossed out the number 95, which is a total of 320 from the survey. And if we multiply that, scale it up to represent the whole population, that's about 13,000. So no, that is not correct. D, we cannot determine the number of females in the population with the information given. Well, we can't determine the exact number, but we can determine approximately because we're assuming that this is representative of the whole. So I would argue, yes, we can determine the number, maybe not the exact number. If we didn't have another answer that looked good, maybe I'd be willing to go with D, but I don't like it. I think it's not a good answer. A, however, is a fantastic answer, so we're going to stick with A. All right, 23. Expression number 1, expression number 2, what is x minus y? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first one, I'm going to divide everything by 2, because I can. X squared minus y squared equals 36. All right. Now, how can I deal with x squared minus y squared? Well, if I knew what x and y were, that'd be great, but I don't. So let's do the next thing we can do with this expression, which hopefully you should be already screaming at me exactly what to do with it, because you should recognize this form and you should go, that's a difference of 2 squares. We need a factor. X plus y, x minus y is equal to 36. Now, let's note that in the information given, x plus y is 18. And x minus y is the what we're looking for. So 18 times is 36. What is 2. And we did not need to know what x was. We did not need to know what y is. We do not care. Could we figure them out? Sure, it is possible to do. But realistically, do we care? Nah, not at all. What are they, 6 and 4? No, it has to be larger because they have to add up to 18. 10 and 8, I guess they would be. Yeah, 10 and 8 works. So that's what the numbers actually are if we were interested, but you don't need to figure that out. There's no reason to figure that out. So make sure you factor when you can factor. All right, 24, looking kind of funky here. Root 10x plus 35 equals x plus 6, and what are the values of x divided by 2? All right, I'm going to highlight this because I want to make sure I don't forget that. So, all right, root 10x plus 35 equals x plus 6. The first thing I want to do is square both sides to get rid of this square root. So I'm going to get 10x plus 35 is equal to x plus 6 squared. So x plus 6, I'm going to think of that as x plus 6 times x plus 6. If you're not comfortable with your binomial square, go ahead and do the FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. X squared plus 6x plus another 6x is 12x, and then plus 36. Please do not call that x squared plus 36, and do remember the plus 12x in the middle. All right, this is a quadratic. We got to bring everything to one side. So x squared, subtract the 10x, subtract the 35, and it would appear that if we factor this, we get x plus 1 times x plus 1. So seemingly the answer is -1. All right, and we need to remember this is x divided by 2, so x over 2 is -1/2. Now, because we squared both sides, I do want to check this answer. So I'm going to ask myself, if I plug in a -1/2, what happens? So I plug in a -1/2, this is -5 plus 35, this is the square root of 30. -1/2 plus 6, this is going to be 5.5. So does that check out? Is 5.5 squared equal to the square root of 30? Or is 5.5 squared equal to 30? No. What did I do wrong? Did I make a mistake? Because this doesn't seem to check out. Why does this not work? 5, -5 plus 35 is 30. That is the square root of 30. -1/2 plus 6. All right, go through our math one more time here. Squared both sides, x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 10x plus 35. I did minus 10x minus 10x minus 35 minus 35. And I definitely get this, and that definitely factors into x plus 1 times x plus 1. So either x is -1 or x is -1, and we want that divided by 2. Oh, right. I'm not plugging in a -1/2, I'm plugging in a -1. So I plug in a -1, this becomes square root of 25, and this becomes 5. That was really dumb of me. Okay, but we worked through it. We figured out why there was an error. There we go. Okay, 25. The table above shows the years worked by employees at a hospital. What is the probability that technician has worked 6 or more years? Technician, 6 or more years is right here. So 18 plus 12 is 30. So 30 of our 60 technicians have worked for 6 or more years. That's going to be 50%. If a is a constant and f of 2 plus f of 3 equals f of 5, what is the value of a? Well, let's find out. F of 2 is 2 times 2 squared plus a, or in other words, 8 plus a. F of 3 is 2 times 3 squared, which is 9 plus a, so 18 plus a. That's an 8. And f of 5 is 2 times 5 squared plus a, which is 50 plus a. And what we know then is that if we add them together, we're going to get that 8 plus a plus 18 plus a is equal to 50 plus a. So 26 plus 2a is equal to 50 plus a. And therefore, if we subtract, we're going to get a equals 24. All right, so therefore we must go with answer choice C. All right, 27. We've got 3x plus 4y equals 12. We've got 4x plus 3y equals -5. Now, tempting is to just go and try to do like an elimination, but there's an easier path here. Because if you'll notice, what they actually want is x plus y. And very frequently with questions like this, the trick is to either add the lines or subtract the lines, and it gives you something you want. I'm going to add the lines, and I'm going to get 7x plus 7y is equal to 7. Now, does this help me answer what I'm looking for? If I am looking for x plus y, does 7x plus 7y over equals 7 help me? Well, yeah, because if I just divide everything by 7, I get x plus y equals 1. And I don't care what the values are. Could you go and find the values? Yes. You could quadruple the first line, triple the second line, so you get 12x and 12x, do an elimination, or you could solve one of these for x or for y and do a substitution. Those are long, those are messy. There are other ways of solving systems of equations. You could do some kind of graph, you could do Cramer's rule, you could use matrices. If you know all those techniques, we don't need to touch any of them. Substitution and elimination are fine, and in this case, we didn't even need to go that far. So shortcuts are definitely valuable when you can spot them. I've done so many SATs over the years that I absolutely spot them. Oh, we're into the grid ends. We are almost there. We've got, what, 4 more questions. All right, so these are going to be free response questions. We need to make sure that we don't screw anything up. So first of all, x squared plus 5 equals 7. X squared plus 5 times k equals 21. So if x squared plus 5 is 7, I'm just going to cross this out and write 7. 7k equals 21. So k equals 3. Okay, so in our grid in, we're going to need to make sure that we fill in 3, like that, or anywhere in the middle. But just stick a 3 and don't ask any more questions. Don't fill in the other blocks. You don't need to put 3.00 or anything silly like that. When you do a grid in for a practice test, please make the 4 boxes and please fill them in because you can make mistakes with the gridding in. All right, there are 42 integers in a group. If there are 5 times as many odds as there are evens, how many? Okay, so odd to even is 5 to 1. So in other words, if there are x even, then there are 5x odd, and that means there's a total of 6x numbers. And we know that that total is equal to 42. So that means that this x right here that I've made up must be equal to 7. Oh, well, that means now we can go here and we can say this is 7 and this is 35. Okay, now we need to answer the question being asked. It wants to know how many are even. 7 are. Questions? Hopefully not. This is a ratio question, so we need to be thinking about that. We need to be saying, okay, 5 to 1. There are a variety of different ways to set this up, but the easiest is to just say it's 5x to 1x. And that means to a total of 6x. And if 6x is 42, we can figure out the others. All right, we are moving pretty quickly here. We've got like 9 minutes to answer 2 more questions. But oh boy, these look like they're going to be messy. All right. All I see is words, 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 and some terrible things. All right. So what is going on? So words, we got to read these. 1 hertz is measure frequency is equal to 1 cycle per second. That might be important. 1 hertz, 1 cycle per second. String on a violin, the A string is frequency of 440. If the string length is decreased, its resonant frequency is increased. So length down, frequency up. The decrease in string length changes the string frequency according to this formula, where F is the frequency in hertz, V is a constant that we don't know, and L is the string length. An application of the equation is demonstrated below. So we cut the length in half and it makes the frequency double. Yeah, that's how frequency works. All right, if the length on an A string of a violin is decreased by 1/4, what is the resonant frequency of the string? All right, so first of all, when you're seeing that A in there, that's referring to the note name. They're not using bad grammar going N a string. That's supposed to be a letter A string. All right, so getting that out of the way. An A string is decreased by 1/4. What is the resonant frequency? So we know that an A string has a frequency of 440 is equal to V over 2L. All right, how does this help us? Well, let's see. If we double both sides, we get 880 equals V over L. What I really want to do is solve this for L. So L is equal to V over 880 if I shift some stuff around. Now we don't know what V is. V is just some number. They say in the problem that V is a constant. So we can't do anything with V, but we know it's going to be the same V no matter what. So we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to call it V. Now what we are going to do is we're going to decrease by 1/4. So if we decrease by 1/4, that means that new L is equal to 3/4 of old L. And now we're going to go back to our formula. We're going to say the frequency is equal to V over 2. The new frequency is going to be over L new. And L new is going to be 3/4 of L. All right, how do we work with this? So V over, that is 6/4 L, or 3/2. So 3 over 2. So I'm going to say that this is the same thing as 2/3 V over L. And you're looking at me going, how does that help? And my answer is, I probably didn't write this in the most useful way. So I'm going to back this up because we want to make this look like the old formula. What we know is that the frequency with regular old V over 2L, or no, never mind, I've solved it. I'm good here. V over L is 880. So this is 880. So therefore, I'm just going to say 2/3 times 880. Thankfully, I have a calculator, so I don't have to do anything fancy. And I get that it is equal to, rounded to the nearest hertz, that's important. It's 586.6 repeating. So what do we put in for an answer? We're going to put in to the nearest hertz, which is 587. And we're going to leave it like that. Now, how I got here was confusing, so let's step back and think about this again. 440 equals V over 2L. And I knew that we were changing the length, so I went to solve for L. So I solved it for L, and I get L equals V over 880. So now we're going to decrease it by 1/4. That leaves 3/4 behind. So our new length, if I put a 3/4 L down here, and now I have to do some simplifying. Make sure that you're comfortable with dealing with fractions within fractions. I think of it as you take this number and you flip it up as you bring it to the top. So this is like a 2/3 on top, a 2/3 V over L. And thanks to my shifting around, I already knew that V over L was equal to 880. So I was able to substitute at that point. All right, we got 3.5 minutes to answer one last question. Hopefully we can make it. Violin has another string called the D string, which is tuned to resonate at 293.7. If the lengths of a violin A and D string are decreased by half, what is the difference in resonant frequency between these two? Okay, so what we noticed here is that if you cut it in half, it doubles the frequency. Now, if you're not sure that, you can play around with the formulas and see that that is in fact exactly the case. But half the length is double the frequency. So the D string cut in half, half of a D string, is going to be 293.7 times 2, which is 587.4. We already know what half of an A string is because they did it for us. It's right here. Half of an A string is 880. So you wouldn't have to figure that one out on your own. If you could do the D string, if you really had to go through all the work. But they want to know what the difference is. So 880 minus 580, that was a 7, 7.4. So 880 minus answer is 292.6. We need to round this to the nearest hertz. So therefore, our answer is going to be 293. All right, so we have 2 minutes left. If we had been doing this as a real test, we would have been writing all over this and we would pan back. Unfortunately, I've been clearing the screen as I've gone, so I don't have a trail of what we've done. But what you would want to do with these last 2 minutes as our timer ticks away here is you would want to be going back and look at your answers. You want to make sure that they match what you have on your answer sheet as the same as in your test booklet, because you should be circling the answers as you go and then copying them onto your Scantron. You should be looking for the questions that you've circled to say, hey, come back to this, look at this again. You should be very briefly glancing over your work and saying, did I do anything really stupid? Now, when you do that, don't change anything unless it's very obviously wrong. If you are panicking on the second pass, you are just as likely to change a right answer to wrong as a wrong answer to a right. So unless you can say indisputably, yeah, I screwed this up, do not go back and change your answer. But do keep in mind that you might find other ways to approach these questions, superior ways. You might notice details that you missed. Make sure you follow rule 1, which is that you are answering the question being asked. And after everything is said and done, you should hopefully be able to answer all of these questions. All right, now, I realize that we're going to pass 45 minutes, but I do want to come back and take a little longer with 31 here. So let's pretend I didn't just know that I could double. So we know that 293.7 is equal to V over 2L. So L is equal to V over 2 times 293.7, whatever that is. So 2 times 293.7 is 587.4. L equals V over 587.4. All right, so if we cut that in half, because that's what we were told to do, is to cut these strings in half, the half length is going to be a half of V over 587.4, which in other words is V over, and now I need to double that number, and I get 1174.8. So that is the length of our new string. So now let's go through and figure out what the frequency for that is. F equals V over 2 times, our new length is V over 1174.8. All right, so I'm going to simplify this as V over 2 times 1174.8 over V. The V's cancel. And now when I divide 1174.8 by 2, I get exactly the number that I listed before. So there's your alternate proof. And since we are now over 46 minutes, I'm going to have to stop here. So I hope this was helpful.